welcome to Let's Be Perfectly Queer.
A queer podcast creating space to talk about all things queer.
My name is Archie.
And I'm Katie.
And we are your hosts.
Questions of how you identify, seeking answers to clarify. Whether you're queen
or somewhere in between, let's be perfectly queer.
And we're back. I can't help it every time I say it.
So what are we talking about today?
We are going to be talking about stuff.
So on this episode today, we're going to look at queer icons and activists who we would invite to a dinner party. Why? Well, because it is around Christmas time and it's where we start to think about the guests that we're inviting, and we're thinking what queer icons we invite to a dinner party.
Well, I'm thinking about, to be honest, when you said BT dubs, we're going to be chatting about this, I was like, oh, who would I want that I think would be a really good combination of people together and would be really interesting? So I was giving a preface that I've been white girl basic.
Okay, you've been white girl basic.
Yeah,
Good to know.
exactly. So this is not me thinking a lot about everything. I just wanted to be white girl basic because I fucking hate Christmas. I'm not a Grinch. I don't. But I also, if I'm going to sort out a Christmas party or if I'm going to sort out any party, I want people who are just going to be fun that I don't need to worry about.
Makes sense.
You know? We host parties. I'm not the best at hosting parties. I will be open about that. My anxiety goes crazy. So if I'm inviting people to a party, I need them to be able to hold their own. This is my preface.
Okay.
Thanks, bro. Thanks for listening.
So before we start this episode, I just want to do a shout out to some new locations where people have been listening from. So we have new listeners in Hong Kong, Everett, Massachusetts, and Binningen, Basel-Landschaft.
Where's that?
No idea.
Oh, okay.
But yeah, so those are the new listeners, which I thought was pretty awesome.
That is pretty cool. I wonder why. I wonder how we reach these people.
I don't know, but it's pretty cool. It's pretty cool.
it.
Maybe Threads. I've been obsessed with Threads lately, and we've got more new traction from Threads.
I don't quite understand what Threads is.
It's kind of like Twitter almost. Like you post a comment or a status and that kind of thing, and then people will like reshare that or comment below that and that kind of stuff.
Oh, so it really
that makes
is
sense.
like Twitter. All right. I don't feel like I'm going to get on this train of Threads. Just meant in general. You know how like some things start off and you're like, can I be bothered?
But I said I was never going to get on Facebook, and then I did. And then I said I was never going to get on Instagram, and then I did. So you never know.
What about Twitter? Have you ever used Twitter?
I tried, but it really wasn't my thing.
And it's the same with Reddit. I feel like I like listening to Reddit stories, but I find it really hard as a user platform. It's not intuitive.
It is once you get to know it, because I go on all the different Reddit forums and have a look and that kind of stuff, but you've got to play around with it for a little bit, but then it's
That's
pretty
exactly
easy.
The opposite to intuitive.
It's
What I mean?
You mean, yeah, but it is
Intuitive
intuitive once
is
you
like-
learn it. Like all you have to do is play around with it, and then it's pretty easy.
Yeah, but opposite to intuitive, bro.
Anyway.
Yeah, cool.
So before we get into the episode, just a quick thing. When was the first gay and LGBT event, and where in Australia?
In Australia?
In Australia.
Oh, good lordy. Okay. I'm thinking, so I would say it would be in 1970s. Am I going to get multiple choice or do I just need to pull this out of my ass?
Just pull it out.
Okay. Let's go for the 14th of January, 1976. And we're going to say in Sydney.
I meant year, not like exact date. So it was in Sydney and it was in 1978, but do you know what it was?
Did I say 1978?
No, you said 1976.
How good am I?
Yeah.
I feel like we need to take a second there to appreciate how good I was at guessing.
It's not bad.
Not bad. It was really good. If I'd had asked you the same question out of the blue, do you reckon you could have gotten to that? Yeah, exactly. I'm patting myself on the back, mate. Okay, what event was it? Okay, what would they have been doing in 1978? I reckon it was probably something in summer. No, it would have been an activist kind of thing. So what month was it in?
What main event happens in Sydney?
What, Pride?
Yeah, but what's it called?
I don't know.
Mardi Gras.
Well, that's basically Pride.
So basically Mardi Gras Sydney in 1978, and it was still when homosexuality was illegal.
Wonder why it's called Mardi Gras.
No idea. It's what it's called in New Orleans too, isn't it?
Yeah.
Anyway, it was an important milestone for Australian LGBT civil rights. And with that, when was the first time it was televised on television?
Let's go 94.
95.
I'm actually doing really fucking well with this.
So the reason why I'm talking about this anyway is that there's been some recent news about the Mardi Gras and Sydney. So there's a queer activist group called Pride in Protest, and they're pushing for the Sydney Mardi Gras to be a public holiday.
Oh, cool. That's awesome.
And, obviously there are going to be some people who come back with a backlash saying, why is it a public holiday? But then if you look at it, yes, Sydney Mardi Gras, it is one of the major events on their calendar, correct?
Yeah.
And then if you're going to come back with that argument, then also you're looking at why is Melbourne allowed to have a public holiday for the Melbourne Cup?
Yeah, it's a bit of a question, isn't it?
So it'll be interesting because I think it was either today, so we're recording this, it's early December. And this will come out mid-December. And as we're recording this, they are actually sitting down, the actual, I want to say the Sydney Mardi Gras Committee are sitting down to vote whether the police should be in the parade.
Oh, wow.
I don't agree with that. I don't agree that you should ban all police because a lot of those people who are marching are members of LGBTQIA plus communities. So why would you then disallow them and segregate them from marching? I get it. Yes, there is the history of brutality and so forth, but you have to look at it now.
Yeah.
And look at the people who are marching. Yes, like in every organisation, if you say, okay, police aren't allowed to march, what about if the CEO of Coles was very, very homophobic? Is everybody in Coles no longer allowed to march? Can you see where it's like, it's the people who are marching are people who are LGBTQIA plus or have family members or allies. So I don't agree with not allowing them to march. That's my opinion.
Yeah, and I agree with you because I think in addition to that, we should be celebrating that there is queer representation in the police force. And therefore, no matter what, when you have like minorities that go into large businesses, there has to be more allowances made for those minorities, which sounds like a bit of a weird thing to say, but it's the representation. If you've got representation there, then there is more understanding that minorities are just like individuals, part of society. So I think, if anything, it's in celebratory that we have queer people everywhere.
Yeah.
And that hopefully that makes it better in that area. If you have more people understanding in the police force that there are minorities, that everyone should be treated the same, then hopefully, hopefully it will lead to greater understanding and better outcomes for people.
Yeah, that's exactly it. Look, I get what they're trying to do, but I don't think this is the right thing to do. You're segregating them. So, and it should all be about belonging and love and not kicking out people based on past events, I
agree. Because when has an us and them mentality actually helped anybody?
Nobody. It's never helped. It just caused more issues and drama and fighting and Also, Perth has become one of the finalists for the Gay Games for 2030. So they're one out of the 3 finalists. So the 3 finalists are Denver. I think it was Auckland. I know it's one New Zealand. Let me check. So the 3 finalists are Denver, Auckland, and Perth. I want to say that we had some kind of say in that because remember, when was it? We need to work out what episode it was that we were like, Perth needs to apply. We're here for it. We're fighting for you guys. And then the top 3, obviously, it had something to do with us.
Yeah, totally. It was our Gay Games episode when we were calling out to all the queer representation in Perth that we needed to apply. And then all of a sudden, there was a lot of applications for the Gay Games. And the Gay Games shouted us out.
Yeah, they did.
That was so fucking awesome.
Yeah, so, which is very, very exciting. So,
Kudos.
Fingers crossed that Perth gets across the line. And,
nice pun.
Oh, it wasn't actually meant to be a pen, but sure. Hopefully, that we become the host city for 2030. I think that'd be brilliant.
I wonder what our likelihood, if you think about Auckland and Denver.
Look, it's expensive to get over here, but Denver, with the political climate in 2030, I don't think you don't know what's going to be happening. So to have it over there would be pretty risky.
Yeah.
If you're looking at the New Zealand government and who is the Prime Minister at the moment, he's a little bit problematic.
Yeah.
But I think Auckland is pretty open.
He's no Jacinta Ardern.
And did you know Melbourne actually put a bid in, but then they pulled their bid?
Really?
Yeah. So basically, because the Melbourne government weren't willing to help sponsor and put in the amount of money that was required to run the event. It's funny because I did make a comment about if they couldn't do the Commonwealth Games, why are they going to do another thing? And they did pull out. So, and it's a much smaller event. And so if they couldn't back up their bid for the Gay Games, I'm actually surprised, that they ever put in a bid for the Commonwealth Games and cost the taxpayers a lot of money there.
Intriguing, isn't it? All the speculation. How cool is that? 2030.
Yeah, that'd be really awesome.
That's only less than 6 years away.
Yeah.
Wow.
Which would be very, very, very cool. We put our hand up to do any of the commentating.
Yeah, totally. Get us out there. We're great commentators.
Yeah, we try. So by the time everyone's listening this as well, my students would have found out that I'm not teaching next year.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
Oh, love to drop this bomb. Tell us about that.
So I've been thinking about this for a very, very long time. And teaching takes over your whole life. It takes over your personality. You have to be careful what you do outside when you go to the shops, going to somewhere like Carousel and running into students, or also being careful of what I say on the podcast and that kind of stuff. So it really senses you as a person and it becomes your whole life. And teaching recently, every year it's just got worse and worse and worse. It's more responsibility, no time to do it, but you're still expected to do the same thing. And it's less about what you do in the classroom now, and it's about the stuff that you have to put up online and all of the different paperwork and having this ready and having this plan and this form and all this data, and it's no longer about teaching.
Yeah.
And that's why there is a massive, massive influx of teachers leaving the profession. So someone did point out, so in WA alone, there's 60,000 registered teachers, but there's only 30,000 who are teaching.
Yeah.
Which is insane.
Do you think it's all for the same reasons as you?
I reckon it'd be similar. So there's a lot of groups and stuff, and a lot of it is burnout.
Yeah.
And it's not getting the support from the admin that they should be getting. And I think that sometimes with some admin, they just haven't been in a classroom for a very long time. And the kids now is a COVID generation, and they are so different from 5 years ago. They really, really are. And kids just don't have respect for teachers like they used to. But, when I first started teaching, so 8 years ago, when I first started teaching, kids didn't really talk back. You'd have one or two kids who would talk back. Now, it's half your class. They just don't have respect, and they just talk back and they don't want to be there, and they're very vocal about not wanting to be there, where before they just sit there and they get it done. They're like, we understand this is part of our life. And now a lot of them say like, well, my parent doesn't care about this class and they don't care that I fail. And then you contact that parent and they don't care. So it's just like you're fighting up against a system where it was almost like it's parents who hated school now telling their kids that, oh, you don't have to respect your teachers. And what's even worse now, I'm hearing some students say, no, you have to earn my respect.
What?
Yeah.
Ew, that's disgusting. Why?
Because they say, no, you earn respect. You don't just get respect.
Oh, that's funny, because that's exactly what I can see a parent saying to them. And that's just mirrored from what they're saying to you. But that's not necessarily right. Like, it's not, respect is such a hard thing to unpack. And I could go on a tangent for this. Yeah. But that's just actually fucking disgusting. Because even if parents think that teachers are glorified babysitters, because I have heard that, they don't understand that as a teacher, you still have a responsibility for that student to pass and to try and give them as much resources that if you're saying to your child, oh, you're going to fail, the teacher still has to do so much more work to prove that they have provided every single thing that they can do to engage this student, and then engage the parent to inform them that they're actually failing. It's not just like, oh, well, you don't want to work? That's fine, don't work. Yeah. It's like, because of the way that teachers are set up and the Department of Education is set up, is that you have to do everything that you can to make these students pass, which is ridiculous.
Yes.
Because if they should have some autonomy for themselves.
Yeah. And, parents don't realise, and I think that's another thing while I'm so exhausted, I gave up a lot of my lunch times. I'd get to school from 7:30, even though school starts at 8:45, because students needed some before school help. And so I was giving so many extra hours, because if you don't do that, then it turns on you as like, what did you do to support them? Yeah. So you're expected to work well over your hours that you don't get paid for, to help support kids. And yeah, and then it's
but
just things
also
like...
you giving up all of your lunch times to make
Yeah.
sure that you're getting the LGBTQIA plus club going to support those kind of students in
Yeah.
minorities that get bullied incessantly. And so you're putting your heart and soul into providing a safe space for them in time that you're not paid for.
Yeah, I don't get paid for any of that. And then, I do things like run the Ida Hobbit, and me and the, club, we came up with processes and that kind of stuff. And I did all this extra work, and instead of, being nice and taking a duty off me, no, I've got to do my minimum required of duties while also running a club. You don't get recognized for the extra things you do in teaching. You don't. It's become an expectation of what you do rather than recognized of like going above and beyond. It's like, no, as a teacher, you must always go above and beyond now, where some teachers don't. And if I was to stop and drop the ball, then what's going on? So it's just, I think that's the problem with teaching is not everybody is at the same standard.
Yeah.
And it's getting exhausting. And a lot of good teachers are leaving the profession because they're just burnt out and they're sick of doing their best and their best not being enough anymore.
Do you know, I found it really interesting now working in quality and safety and how much the Australian National Standards for Quality and Safety in Health govern how we manage patients, how we manage care, how we do everything. And that includes in that body of work inclusivity, which is cultural inclusivity, gender inclusivity, sexuality inclusivity, all those kind of different factors that are mandated in the functional processes of each health service. That looking at how the government runs healthcare to how the government runs education is so vastly different. Like the standards that we uphold, and granted healthcare, like you're keeping people alive and that kind of stuff, but also in keeping people alive, if we can understand that there needs to be processes that understand and reflect and support people's diversity, how can that not also have standards of how you manage diversity in education? And it's sad that it is required on a singular basis, that you have to do that out of the goodness of your own bloody heart, whereas this should be a greater scheme of things. Like it's not the drop in the ocean that you should be looking at. It's the culture of change and how society is.
And that's the thing. Society has changed so much, but teaching has changed very little. And the reason why I needed a break, I'm tired of a system that has not changed the whole time I've been teaching. And the changes that have happened have not been for the positive.
Yeah.
And so it's kind of frustrating. And then another reason, it becomes your whole life and you lose yourself. And I definitely lost myself. And then I'm just sick of the people doing the wrong thing getting rewarded and the people doing the right thing not getting rewarded. And it's a systemic issue. It's not in just one school. It is an issue that is created by the Department of Education, and the Department of Education needs a massive U-haul. That is my opinion. And it's constantly an uphill battle with no end in sight. That's what teaching is at the moment. And especially because I teach the arts, and parents and students don't respect the arts. And so it's kind of, you've already, day one, have got to battle against the parents and the students because they don't see the point of it and they don't see why. And they say, well, I don't like it and my parents don't care about the arts, so it doesn't matter.
But it also sets up a precedence that it's okay to fail, just fail stuff, just do things and it doesn't matter and just fail, which actually in life is a really bad lesson to learn.
Yeah.
Because if you're not willing to even try or do something, you're doing disservice to yourself with the time that you're wasting, but you're also doing a disservice to everybody else who's having to put time and effort into you failing, which doesn't work in life. It just doesn't work like that. If you're going to do something, do something. Like literally put time and effort into it, or don't do it at all, because that's how life works. You don't just be like, nah, well, I'll just sit and fail this. And it's disappointing. How do you feel now that you aren't going to be going back to generic teaching for the next year?
Great. I'm like, I'll get a life again. I've almost been on waiting mode. You know what I mean? And this might sound silly to people who don't understand, but it's like, oh yeah, I'm going to get through this part and then this will be okay. And then I'll have time for this. And then you don't have time for this. And so I'll actually just have time to focus on me and things I want to do. And things like the podcast, like I can actually put in more effort and we can go back to doing videos and that kind of stuff, which I've just haven't had the mental energy, because teaching is such a mental drain.
But it's also all the other stuff. Like when you're sick, you still have to write all your programs.
Yeah.
On the holidays, you're still marking. On the holidays, sometimes you're writing new programs because things have changed. There's always the following up with parents. It's always the following up with your kids. It doesn't stop, which is having the ability to actually, at the end of the day, be
Turn
like,
off.
I'm done. Like, no longer thinking about work. It's such a beautiful thing. And what are you going to do next year?
So next year, my aim is to do relief. I'm going to do relief. I'm going to go back and play music. So hopefully doing busking and bars and that kind of stuff, and doing the podcast, and also have a casual job doing lighting technician and sound. So some things that I find more interesting and a bit more fun. I just want to do something like that for a bit.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Fill up your own cup for a little bit.
Yeah, I never fill up my own cup. It's always been overfilling everybody else's.
Maybe that's something to learn from that as well, especially around this time of year, is it's such a good time to reassess what you're doing in life. With the new year coming up, and I am never really fond of New Year's resolutions and such things, but it is a good time to reassess what you're doing in life and where you want your life to be, isn't it?
Anyway, have you got any news for yourself before we get into today's topic?
Well, I've been sick again. Like many, many, many times this year, I've gotten sick, so that's basically it. It's one of those things of like having asthma and having inflammatory things, is that at this time of year, I felt a bit burnt out, and someone coughed in my face when we were out at one of our beautiful events for Pride, and I've ended up with bronchitis. So peace out to what that's been fun for. And I've been sick for the last 2 weeks and coughing up a lung, and I've had to really hustle at work because I am now on holidays and I'm going to spend the next 3 weeks doing some self-care. Yeah, working on myself, man. It's the time of year for it. Anyway, shall we get into it?
Let's get into the actual topic. So today's topic, we're looking at the ultimate queer dinner party guest list. So favourite icons, favourite activists.
Who would you want at a dinner party?
Yeah, so who would you want at a dinner party? So, firstly, tell me who your top guests would be and why you'd love to have them there.
Do you reckon you could guess?
Taylor Swift.
Nah. Okay, anyway, guess 3 and I'll tell you if you're right with any then. So Taylor Swift.
Jonathan Van Ness. RuPaul. Lady Gaga.
So, funnily enough, the 3 people that I actually chose were 3 dead people.
Oh, I didn't think about that.
Yeah.
Freddie Mercury then.
Yeah, he is one of them. Yeah. So I chose 3 dead people, and maybe that, like...
So something about you?
Yeah, I think it basically does.
I'm
it definitely
dead
does.
inside.
Yeah, absolutely. So the 3 people I chose was Freddie Mercury, because, I mean, I'll explain at the end of it, but like, does that need an explanation? I chose Frida Kahlo, and then I chose Christine Jorgensen.
Don't know who she is.
So Christine Jorgensen was actually one of the first highly publicised trans females in America.
Oh, okay.
So we've actually done part of an episode on her before.
Oh, see, when I think publicised trans women, I think Marsha P. Johnson.
Yeah. So they're around the same time.
Okay.
Christine actually ended up being in the New York Times, and amazing things, actually. She was in the military as a military clerk. We have talked about her a little bit before, and she was in the military for a military clerk. She came back. She actually has a background of family in Denmark, and she went across to Denmark, and she was one of the first trans women to undergo gender reassignment surgery and hormone replacement therapy.
Because wasn't she the one that I said was based on the Danish girl?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, absolutely. It was amazing. So I would love to invite her to my Christmas party. My dinner party. And the reason that I chose these 3 people, because Christine, I would love to know what it was like for her being in those times, because also being in the New York Times and being so highly publicized, people really had a positive light for her. And it's funny, we've talked about this before, how trans and sexuality and being queer goes in ebbs and flows. Like, people think you're really, really, really cool, and then all of a sudden you're in a government where people hate you. So what it was like for her in those times, being the leader in getting these kind of surgeries. And she was highly publicized as well. And one of the surgeons who actually did, I think it was her vagioplasty, really appreciated the work that she did, because she was able, like, they put a lot of her work into health lectures, and it actually promoted a lot of understanding for trans women. It was absolutely bloody brilliant. Like, I would love to just chat to her about her experience and how scary it must have been, but also how crazy it would have been having such publicity at that time and diversity at that time in something that wasn't highly publicized. So that was her. And then Frida Kahlo. And I feel like these three people would get along like a house on fire because they all have the same kind of vibe of like freedom, but they've had to undergo adversity. And they've also, in Freddie Mercury's and Christine's, I think that they probably would have had to undergo some internalized homophobia in a way. I love how Frida Kahlo, the way that she's portrayed, and it would be really interesting to talk to her about her story, is her. And even though she did have a husband, she was openly bisexual and she had a lot of lovers, and her husband was open about that. And her husband also had, like, allegedly, they both had other lovers as well, which I think is such a beautiful, interesting conversation on how one grows up with having that idea or where does that love come from and appreciation and acceptance of oneself. So I'd love to have her. And Freddie Mercury has such an interesting journey in itself. Like, we've all seen the Freddie movie.
Yep, the biopic.
The biopic. And just everything about him is just, he's kind of an enigma. Yeah. And I would love to just chat to him because I feel like he would be a bit of an introvert like me. And I would love to have like a convo with him and being like, tell us, like, you know how I love doing like deep dives into conversations with people? Mm-hmm. I would love to do that with him. It'd be so interesting. Yeah, so they're my three people. What about yourself?
So my three people would be, I've gone a little bit different. So I have a three, but then I have like two others that, hey, if these guys said no, I didn't invite them as well. So my main one would be Jamie Lee Curtis.
Ah.
Because she's an advocate for trans rights, especially with her daughter being trans.
Yeah.
And so I think she'd just be a great person because she's also a lot older. And so just to get her take on her lived experience and, you know, how her friends and family and the people around her accepted or did not accept her trans daughter would be a very interesting conversation, and to see how she's tackled that by also being such a main figure in the media.
Yeah, definitely.
So I think, and she just seems like she'd be a lot of fun to have at a party, to be completely honest.
I agree.
Another one would be Jonathan Van Ness. I think absolutely fabulous. A massive promoter about HIV awareness, body positivity, and just acceptance. And I think would be such a loving and gentle vibe to have at the party. I think Jonathan and Frida Kahlo would get along like a house on fire. My third one would be Lady Gaga, founded the Born This Way Foundation and is a massive, massive advocate for LGBT youth and LGBT mental health as well. Yeah. And what I think is really, really cool about Lady Gaga, and I don't know if you guys know this, is that when Lady Gaga was first out, people used to assume she was transgender, right? And she never corrected them. Yeah. And she did that on purpose because she didn't want this experience to be negative for the transgender community, because by saying I'm not and making a big deal out of it, I'm making it worse for the transgender community. So she's very open. Is like, okay, no problem. I didn't have an issue with it, and this is why.
Yeah.
But yeah, so those would be my three main guests. If anybody turned down the invitation, I would have Dan Levy.
Oh.
Because
Oh.
Schitt's Creek. And just
Absolutely.
the way that he represented queer romance and love in a show without making it overtly this is queer and making it so normalized was beautiful. So I just to sit down and have a conversation with his brain with him and work out the workings of his brain would be absolutely lovely.
I feel like him and I would be best friends.
I think you guys would get along very, very well. And then this one, I almost put this guy in my top three.
Yeah.
George Takei.
Oh, George Takei is so cute. Right? I love him.
So for those of you who don't know, George Takei, he is an icon. He's an icon for the LGBTQ plus the Asian American community, and has done activism for both sides. And because, for those of you who don't know, I am half Asian, so I'm half Vietnamese. So,
oh my God, are you?
Who would have thought? So for me, having George Takei would be such an interesting thing to talk about his queer experiences and his Asian experience and the cultures and sharing his world. I reckon he'd do it in such a way that is lighthearted and humorous and just very enjoyable. So yeah, those would be my first three, and then others would be chucked in there if I got to know.
Yeah, totally. There's so many other people that I would love to consider as well. The other people I'd like to invite would either be Barack or Michelle Obama, one of those, because I feel like getting their opinion on how the world has changed when, I was going to say they, because in essence it was both of them as a team, even though, they were the biggest power couple. when they were leading America, as well as what the world looked like and how they would have thought the world would have gone and how they would have done COVID differently, as well as how they would have done this whole persecution of the queer community.
In particularly trans women.
Yeah, completely. And like, you know how when Michelle was around, there was so much talk about her being trans. And I was just like, first of all, why, like you were mentioning with Lady Gaga, why does this have to be a conversation? And second of all, any woman who happens to have muscles in their traps or really toned arms is suddenly trans.
Yeah, it's like they look at something that used to be in society quite masculine and like, well, you've got this extra masculine feature, so you must be trans. Or, you know, if someone who presents as male has some feminine qualities, they're like, oh, you must be trans or gay. But that's not always the case.
No, exactly.
Like that famous TikToker, the Filipino guy.
The nurse John.
Yeah, so, you know, because he has some feminine qualities and stuff, and people felt like he was queer baiting just because he had a bit more feminine attributes.
Which is so crazy because if you think about feminine and masculine, I would love to see where this goes in the world in the next 20, 50 years or whatever it is. Probably will take this long for people to realise that innately as humans, we are so diverse. Like it's like we know, but we don't know that really you get dealt a whole lottery of cards about what your attributes are going to be like. And being either feminine or masculine doesn't equate with you being a man or a woman or how you identify. I'd also love to invite Cher.
Yeah, Cher would be great.
Fucking love Cher. Also, and I'm not going to remember his name, which sounds really bad, but the gay Backstreet Boy.
I don't remember his name either.
I wasn't hugely a massive Backstreet Boy fan. I was more into Blue and Five just because we live in Australia.
Do you want to hear some from Threads? So I did post this on Threads and we got some people's opinion about who they would invite. So someone here says, Melvin Boozer. I deeply admire Boozer's trailblazing activism for African-American LGBTQ plus folk and HIV and AIDS rights. In 1980, he made history as the first openly gay person ever nominated for the office of Vice President of the United States. His courage to challenge political norms and speak out for LGBTQ plus equality at such a pivotal moment in history resonates deeply with me. The dinner conversation would undoubtedly be filled with stories of activism, light, shade, and joy. A kiki.
That's beautiful. The crazy thing is that there are so many activists that have been so pivotal in the changes of the queer history that we have. And I just love them. I love everyone who's like, oh yeah, I would have this activist or I would have this person. And I love it. And it makes me so happy that even with the dark times that we have in queer history, that there are these amazing people.
Yeah, who shine a light.
Yeah, totally.
Trudy said that she would invite Rebel Wilson, and because she's a dead set legend and she thinks she would be really interesting to get to know.
Oh, totally agree. Totally agree with you, Trudy. Rebel is brilliant. I love the guts that she has to call out people.
Yeah.
Like, I really enjoy that, and I can appreciate that she's had a really difficult journey in being a plus-size person in the world.
Yeah.
And that's coming from someone who also is a plus-size person. Like, it is really difficult to navigate life, but especially when your life is in social media and then also having your birth of your gender identity, your sexual identity, all that kind of stuff. It just, I can imagine it being very cool.
I feel like I need to do an episode on, because some of these names I've never heard, but some that I have, like someone said Kate McKinnon.
Yep.
Someone else said Susan B. Anthony or Marsha P. Johnson. We have Jodie Foster, Quentin Crisp, Kate Bornstein.
I wonder who Kate Bornstein is.
Don't know, but they said that the reason was gender. There must be an author. So Gender Outlaw was a really important book to me when I was recognizing my non-binary self.
Oh, interesting.
Yeah. Someone said biased on this one, but Aubrey Plaza. Been a fan of her for a very long time, and oh my God, she would just be amazing to sit in a room with.
Oh, she would, wouldn't she? Also, I love the sexual chemistry she has with people. It's just so innate somehow. Like, it's fucking insane. I love her.
Someone said Sappho. I would ask her to recite some of her lost poems.
Oh.
Someone else said Virginia Woolf. She wrote about queerness in such an interesting, nuanced way. I just think she had an interesting brain and was queer in an interesting way.
Very true. Do you know what? I would probably fall in love with all these people.
Yeah.
And then they'd go back to being dead and it'd be sad.
And then a few people said Freddie Mercury. Some people said Billy Porter. But nobody said Lady Gaga. Nobody said Jonathan Van Ness. Mainly more of the older generations in the threads.
It's because nobody's wanting to be a basic white bitch. That's what it is. Everyone, when you ask the question, everyone has the time to think about it and to reassess and try and feel really cool about it, which is why I think some people come out with these really cool ones of people that they've thought about and are really close to their hearts. Whereas, although sometimes it's, I don't want to say that it's uncool.
Yeah.
But you know what I mean? Like when they're like, oh, Lady Gaga, they'll be like, oh yeah, she's so mainstream. And I'm like, yeah, but don't undermine everything that she's done.
Much. She's done so much for the LGBTQ plus community.
It's so true.
Yeah.
And like Cher also has done so much for HIV research. So has Madonna.
Don't forget Dolly Parton. Didn't Dolly
I know,
Parton
I was going to say
yeah,
Dolly
I was like,
Parton.
Dolly Parton gave
I know. I was trying not to because I was thinking about her a lot and I do love Dolly. So I was trying not.
But yeah, so at our party, we would have Freddie Mercury.
Yeah.
Frida Kahlo.
Frida Kahlo. Christine Jorgensen.
Jamie Lee Curtis. Jonathan Van Ness.
And Lady Gaga. And then we would have Barack and Michelle Obama knocking on our door.
Who want to come because they found out about the party, as well as Dan Levy and George Takei.
Oh, I would love
all
this.
All of those people at a party, I think that would be epic.
I reckon it would be the best party full of the best conversations, the best fun. I reckon all those people know how to have fun wholeheartedly.
Yeah, I think so.
Maybe we should just send invitations.
Hey, like, hey, we're having a party. Would you guys like to come? Guys,
Surely.
girls, thems, between.
Yeah. I mean, how often do you reckon Jonathan Van Ness gets a letter from people? Probably all the time. But like George Takei, I reckon in-person invites, I reckon they get invited to all the parties.
Probably, yeah. But yeah, so that would be our guest. Who would your guest be? Why don't you send us a text message and we can share them on the next episode.
A text message?
Remember on...
Oh, yeah. Sorry.
Send us a message. It's like...
I was just like, I don't even reply to my personal messages.
On the descriptions. Comment on the post. You can even comment on our episode on Spotify. For some reason, we get it 6 days later because someone did post on our transgender one about the information and they thought that was really, really good.
True.
So we did see that. Thank you.
Love you guys.
So yeah, and we can finally reply now because we couldn't reply on the Spotify one. So now we can reply, which is good. So send us a message on any of those. You can also email us at perfectlyqueerpod@gmail.com.
And tell us if you'd invite us to your Christmas party.
Yeah. Are we on your queer icons list? I don't think we're at the icon level, but that would be brilliant.
We'd be your friends. We'd help you clean up at the end of the night.
We would. And yeah, that would be our role. But yeah, so we are going on a break. So this is the end of season 2. The next time you hear from us will be the start of season 3, unless I get bored